let's move on. So, iron's still over there cooling. We're going to go ahead and attach our Elevons, our control surfaces, to the back of our wing. And what we're going to use for that is 3M packing tape. So I'm just going to use some 3M packing tape. And this is a method that I learned from Chris over at Right Wing. Chris Click. And it's really easy and works really well. Now he's actually got a newer method where he uses double-sided tape. But I don't like it as much. Well, I mean, it would work. I don't have any double-sided tape handy, so we're pretty much just going to do it the old way. So what you want to do is you want to take a piece of tape and split it into two sections, about 1 inch wide each. And you want to cut that into pieces of about 1 inch length. And what you do is you take two pieces and you put them sticky side together. It'll be hard to see, but and then you stick the two sticky sides together, just like that. And we're going to make a couple of those. We're going to make 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 of them for each one. There we go. Usually I would use more than 4. I would use 6, but these controls, this wing is so small, and these control surfaces are so small that 4 is going to be enough. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is you take the two pieces of tape that you stuck together with the sticky side. This is a sticky side, and this is a sticky side, and this is not sticky, and this is not sticky. So we made like a, we stuck them together so there's a flat spot in the middle where neither one of them is sticky. And we're going to use that to attach this, and we're going to do one to the wing and the bottom, and one to the top and the bottom of the wing, and then the same thing on this end. And then we're going to cover the whole thing, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. So we're going to take the sticky side of this one, stick it to the bottom of this Elevon, just like that, so that the part that's not sticky on either side is right there in the middle. And we're going to take another one, and we're going to do it just the opposite way. We're going to stick it to the top of this, right next to it. Okay, see what I did there? So this side is sticky, and this side is sticky. And we're just going to take it now and put it up against the wing. Anytime you're attaching control surfaces, you always want to point them down like this when you're doing the top, and then up when you're doing the bottom. And I'll show you what I mean. Because you want to make sure you don't restrict your movement. So this is going to go right here. And we're just going to take the one that's sticky on top and stick it right to the top of the wing. Just like that. And then we're going to take the one that's sticky on the bottom and stick it to the bottom of the wing. Just like that. And that makes a nice tight hinge. And we're going to do the same thing on the other end. Take this one, stick it to the top of the wing. And the bottom of the control surface. You want to get these things onto the back of this one pretty tight. Just like that. Take this last one. Let's stick it bottom of the wing. And work it in there first. Bottom of the wing and the top of the control surface, just like that. There we go. So now we've got a good hinge I'm just going to cut off the excess. And then you take a piece of tape and you go down the whole, you'll push it down and go down the whole top of the wing. Just like that. If you don't flex that down like that when you do that, what you'll find is later you'll go to flex it down and it won't go down. So you want to make sure you're flexing it down. And we're just going to go ahead and, again, cut the excess off. I'm going to flip it up like this and put one more piece of tape. Flip it all the way up and over. And put a piece right along the bottom here. Just like that. Along the trailing edge of the wing and the other side of that right there. And again, if you don't flip it all the way up and over, you'll go to find later that it won't move the way it should. There we go. And that's how you make a Z-hinge. And that'll flex nicely down, no problem, and nicely up, no problem, just like that. It's a nice tight hinge, and plenty strong. You're not going to break that hinge, you know, with anything regular. You'd have to do something pretty spectacular to break that hinge. And that's as far down as it moves, but that's just the limit of the two surfaces meeting there. Good. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'll probably cut that out because I've shown it once. You don't need to see both sides. So I'll see you again in a little bit when we're ready to do our next the next part of this wing build. Alright, hey guys, it's Steve, and I am coming to you from the future. That is, a future where our wing is already done. And spoiler alert, it's going to look just like this. There it is. And I'm popping back in time here just to mention something that somehow didn't get recorded. Either I lost the video or it never recorded. But there's a small part of the video that's missing, and that is where the part after I've taped on the hinges and before I put on the control horns. What you need to do is you need to take your hot iron, your laminating iron, and you want to bend these control horns down and just go over the control horn with the laminating iron. Set to about 300 degrees, whatever it was set to when you were laminating the wing. And you want to flip it up and over and do the same thing. Now I did do this, but somehow it didn't get on tape. So I just pop back in time real quick here while I'm editing just to remind you, go ahead and hit that tape with the laminating iron. That's going to make the tape really stick down, and it's also going to relax that hinge so that there's no stress on the hinge and it's very easy to move. It's going to relax that tape and it's going to stick that tape down really well. So just hit it with the laminating iron, flip it up and over, and hitting with the laminating iron again. Alright? That's all I came back to say. So I've got to get this wing up to 88 miles an hour and get back to the future. and you've got to get back to the workbench. Bye-bye. Alright, so we're going to measure the CG of this airplane, and I'm going to use pins again. And I told you that we would use these dress pins for something specific, and it's to mark the CG of your airplane. Now, when you're building airplanes, unlike quadcopters, weight balance is extremely important. And it's probably the #1 most important thing to getting your plane to fly well. So, every time you fly, you have to check that you're balanced properly. So I'm going to use these pins, these dress pins, to mark the balance point of this plane, and I'm just going to leave them in there so I can check it anytime I want. Now, it's 94 millimeters from the nose, because this plane was made in Canada, and Canada uses the metric system. So I've set my calipers here to 94 millimeters, and I'm just going to, from the front, it's right there. So I'm going to take a pin, I'm just going to put it right in that spot. Okay, 94 millimeters from the front. I'm going to put a pin in that spot. Now, I'm not going to leave them up like that, obviously. I'm going to turn them sideways along the CG line and push them into the wing so that they don't stick out the top. Just like that. There we go. So that's the point at which this airplane should balance. You see now I've got a very handy marker that you can feel. So when I'm on a flight line, I can just put my fingers on there and balance the plane on at that point, and that's where it should fly, or it should be a little more nose heavy than that. So we've got that marked. That's an important thing to do. Now the next thing we're going to do is install some servos. But before we do that, we have to do some wiring. So we're going to put an XT60 on our ESC and just test everything and make sure everything's good to go before we put it in the plane. So I'm going to pause the video, get everything ready to go, and we'll be right back. Alright, so I've just soldered up a plug to my ESC. And all I've done is put an XT60 directly to the ESC with just a JST pigtail coming off, and that's going to power our FPV system. That's all the power distribution required for a plane like this. Now on the other end, I've just got bare wires, so I'm going to go ahead and I may shorten these a little bit. Let's take a look at where I'm going to mount this ESC. I'm going to mount it pretty much right here between the battery bay and the motor. So, got plenty of wire here. So yeah, I'm going to take about this much, but that much off of these wires. Just shorten them to right there. This is such a small plane, you don't need a ton of wire. And then we're going to solder on some bullet connectors. And we use bullet connectors in a plane because, especially a plane like this where we're going to use quadcopter props, because they come in sets of 4. Or at least sets of 2, clockwise and counterclockwise. So this ESC is not going to be hooked up to any computer or anything. It's not going to be hooked up to a flight controller, so you're not going to be able to change the direction of it easily with programming. So we're going to use bullet connectors so that if we want to change the motor direction to use those other 2 props in the package, we can just swap 2 wires on the flight line and change direction. It's simple. Also, if you ever have to change out a motor or an ESC, we're just going to Velcro this ESC to the airframe. So if it blows out or burns out or something goes wrong with it, we're just going to be able to just unplug it and swap it right out without getting out the soldering iron. It's just, on quadcopters I don't use bullet connectors, but on planes I always do. It's just the way it's done. It's just one of those things. So I've got some 3mm bullet connectors. I also have some 2mm bullet connectors, but I felt like they weren't quite heavy duty enough for what I wanted to do here. So I'm just going to tin these wires. There goes my plane. That's fine. Just keep it away from the soldering iron. And I've got one of my bullet connectors right here in this, and I'm just going to stick a wire in there and melt it in. There we go. All there is to it. Once your wires are tinned, stick it in there, hit it with the soldering iron. It's done. Alright, let's do another one. Now you always want to, when you're using bullet connectors, you always want to put the socket end on your ESC. And I'll explain to you why. It's because the socket end you can completely cover with heat shrink. And that's the end that would have power if it got disconnected. Whereas if two motor plugs touch, it doesn't matter because there's no power. If two of these touch and it's powered, you're going to have a major problem. So you completely cover these with heat shrink, and the plug ends go on the motor. And I'll show you the heat shrink I'm talking about with the heat shrink here in a second. There we go, just like that. I'm also going to shorten the motor wires. There's just way too much wire there. So there we go. We've got our 3 plugs on there. And we're going to take our heat shrink and put it on there and just, you know what, I'm going to cut it nice and straight. And run it right to the end of that plug, and actually just a millimeter past the end of that plug, so that none of that is exposed once it's on there. Just like that. There you go. Now you can see that none of that is going to be exposed to be able to touch one of these other ones. I'm going to do the same thing with these other 2. Just a millimeter past the edge. And just shrink it on. Good. There should be one more piece of, cut one more piece of heat shrink. There it is. Just like that. And there it is. Alright, now it's ready to go. As you can see, no chance of those touching each other and shorting out while we're just testing this system or any other time. Well, that's what we want. Alright, so all the electronics that are playing that actually require flight are 2 servos, an ESC, and a receiver. And I didn't mention the receiver I'm using earlier because it's another piece I already had. It's a X4R SB 3-channel plus S-bus. And we're not going to use the S-bus, we're only going to use the 3 channels. If you're setting up a flying wing, or any plane really, you need the number of channels you need is your ESC plus the number of servo you have. So we have an ESC, 2 servos, that's 3 channels, and that's all we need. And that's all we have. So that's going to work out. If you have one of these, fine. If you have a 4-channel, you can still use it. You know, you can have extra channels, that's no big deal as long as you got the minimum you need. Now if you're setting up something like a micro Wraith, you're going to need 4 channels. So you want to get the X4R not SB version, that's a 4-channel, or something that has more channels than that. Or whatever. So I've got my servos plugged into channel 3 and channel 2, and I'm plugged my ESC into channel 1, that's going to be throttle. And the reason I'm doing this outside of the plane is we need to center these servos. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bind this to my radio, and I'm going to power this. And when I do, and that receiver gets signal, it's going to put these servos to center. And once they're centered, then I can put the servo arms on. You want to put the servo arms on at 90 degrees. So I've got my servo arm right here. And you want to put that at 90 degrees to the body. But if I just put that on there now, when I power this servo, it may turn like that, and that may be center. I don't know. Until you power it, you don't know where center is. So we're going to power these receivers. We're going to get them to center themselves. Then we're going to put that on it as close to 90 degrees as we can get it for both servos. One this way and one, facing the other way, and you'll see what I mean. So I'm going to do that off camera. I'm just going to set up a model real quick. Later on, we'll go through setting up a model, binding your receiver, all the radio stuff. I'm just going to do this quickly so I can get these servos centered. So later on, we'll go through the complete radio setup of the wing. But for now, I'm just going to do it really quickly off camera, center these servos, put the arms on so we can start installing our servos and installing our flight system. So I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to go get this bound to a radio, and I'm going to get these servos centered, and I'll show you what I mean in a few minutes. So I'll see you in a few minutes.